In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at CSS and just understanding some basics about it. So you can go to the digital media website and look under Web Development, Lectures, Web Development, and CSS Intro and Selectors and find out some more information. And I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit, but you should get the general idea from what I'm going to do. Now, you can find information on CSS all over the place. All you have to do is a Google search and you'll find thousands of tutorials on CSS because this is the biggest thing to hit web development in a long time. Now CSS has been around for a long time. It's been around for many, many years, but we've just really gotten into how CSS is going to be used to create the most effective websites over the last few years as things have really picked up with it. Now, understanding what CSS is important, so I'm going to go to this webboy.net website just to talk about it a second. You'll see that CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Now, cascading is a certain thing that style sheets do, which we're not really going to talk about, but it just means the way that the rules are applied to the page. Anyway, it's a language which is separate from HTML or XHTML. It's its own thing. Now, it's used to specify the layout or formatting properties of HTML elements or the markup that you have on the page. With CSS, a single CSS file, you can control entire websites easily, and you can control the font styles, the font types, font and element colors, paddings, margins, and positioning. You can also control things like images that you put in the backgrounds or images that you have as rollovers. There's lots of things that you can do. Now, of course, CSS allows us to separate our style from our presentation from the content of our page. The presentation meaning the look, appearance, colors, fonts, everything. So there are some major advantages with CSS. And this is not just with positioning, but overall. It makes it easy to make site-wide changes easily because all of the CSS is in one file and we can control the entire look with that one file. It makes smaller files because, once again, the code is just one place. You might say that it makes things easier to code, although it's a little tricky to learn how CSS works. It allows you to have a little bit more control because you have very precise control over each property of your website or of your markup. It also allows you to have more accessibility for a wide variety of mediums. Such as with your CSS, you can control how it will look on handheld devices versus web TV versus printers versus a desktop browser like we have here. Now, there are disadvantages to using CSS. Some of the disadvantages are that not every web browser uses CSS the exact same way. And this is an argument that you've always seen between Internet Explorer versus Firefox. And some of the old software, Dreamweaver 4 and MX, didn't always write the CSS or render it correctly. And this has really changed as we've gotten, our Dreamweaver is now up to CS4, which is a much improved version over that stuff. You still do find that there's some compliant issues with CSS. Now, another disadvantage to CSS in general, not just positioning, but CSS in general, is that it's tricky to learn. And that's because of some of the rules of the way it works. Now, there's these two rules about inheritance versus cascading, which I definitely think that you should take a look at in the future. But it's about how the rules are applied to the page. And we're not going to really talk about it in these tutorials because it's a little bit beyond the scope, but it can be a pretty confusing little model at times. Now, the basic thing that we need to understand are basics of CSS syntax and properties, and that's what we're going to look at in the next video tutorial.